You need to be able to answer this one question. And when I start working with couples, this is one of the first questions I ask.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised how many of them cannot answer it correctly.
Okay.
I say, what is your partner's number one need in life right now? What's their biggest concern?
Well, hello, Matthew. Oh my goodness, he's here. Oh, Matthew, I just want to tell you, we get so excited, myself included and our listeners, when we have opportunities to talk to men, and especially men when it comes to relationships. And I know that you're a men's coach and you talk about relationships and, all the things. But even before I get started, Matthew, I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to read a short bio so the listeners can know exactly who you are. And then we're going to get into it from there. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Today's guest is Matthew P. Hoffman, a men's relationship coach, speaker, author, and the host of Kick-Ass Couples Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men become stronger, more intentional partners. Matthew has been married for over 25 years, and their own journey of navigating challenges, rebuilding intimacy, and doing the inner work is what inspired his mission to support men in becoming the husbands and leaders their families can thrive with. He's also the founder of Kick-Ass Couples Nation and the author of Kick-Ass Husbands, where he teaches men the core pillars of healthy relationships, from communication and commitment to emotional connection and personal responsibility. Matthew brings practical wisdom, tools, and real-life insight to help men build marriages that are deeply connected and built to last. I am so excited to welcome my guest today, Matthew. Thank you, Matthew, for being here.
My pleasure. Glad to be with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Matthew, when we talk about relationships, and often, I do have the honor, I get to talk to many experts, and I talk to experts that, talk about the matters of the heart in different ways. But something that I think is so powerful and so needed is also when we talk about relationships to get the different perspective, when it comes to relationships, the man's perspective too, because really it's the man and the woman. And I'm always trying to figure out how to bridge the gap so we both can have this beautiful relationship with ourselves, with each other. First, of course, with ourselves, but with each other. And so I know this is the work you do, and I'm just fascinated, and especially when men are able to do this work. It is so powerful and it's so needed. And I think it's pretty actually awesome. So thank you for this. Seriously, thank you. It's so awesome. Matthew, take me back a little bit.
Sure.
Where did you grow up? I'm sure you didn't expect yourself to be probably, a men's relationship coach. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And I would love to start from there.
Sure. Well, I want to tell you too, I do coach men, but I coach women as well. So I do men, women, and couples, together and separate.
Okay.
So I get to work with men and women. And, I grew up in Florida. In Clearwater near Tampa Bay. And so I was on the water, in the water. And no, if you were going to ask me as a teenager, high school, even college or post-grad school, I wouldn't tell you that I was expect to be a relationship or business coach where I am today. So I'm kind of on my third career, I guess you could say. And I got into this. I've had a successful career in business. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I never met an idea I didn't like, right? So there's a problem there about always pursuing different ideas, but it's given me a great exposure and understanding of how to balance life and how do you take the relationships and the careers and make them work together. A lot of people think they're separate and there's not a lot of spillover, but I would argue that when you have success in your number one human relationship, you're long-term committed, whether you're married or not, that really is the center or the wellspring of your success. And it bleeds and spills over into everything else you do in your life. So I really work with couples and men and women to help them make that relationship the core of their life so it can inform, influence, and support everything else that they do.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I knew that you were, thank you for clarifying that. I knew that you were a relationship coach, and I thought it was just with men, but I love that you're saying that you work with both. That's pretty
Yeah.
fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So Matthew, so take me back then. So you have been married for how many years, Matthew?
We're actually just celebrated our 31st anniversary. So and
Wow.
and years are great. And you could be married for 30 years and have an incredible relationship, or you can be married 50 years and have a horrible relationship. So I think just the time doesn't always measure success, but I would have to say the one thing I say all the time, and it's not a cliche, I really believe it is, I never thought my relationship could be as good as it is right now. I expect it to be good and to be happy and enjoyable. But because my wife and I have done the work and we've invested and we stay committed to each other and we do a lot of things that help keep us successful. And, we've answered that number one question of commitment in our lives. Neither of us has any doubt that we're each committed to the relationship and committed to each other. So when commitment's off the table and you're not going to screw up or make a big mistake and it's going to have relationship ending power, doesn't mean you can always do anything you want and not worry about the relationship. But we're each so committed to each other that we give a lot of grace, and we can make mistakes or have uncertainty or have insecurities, and it's okay. My wife has said to me on more than any one occasion, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here. Doesn't matter. We'll get through it, or we'll figure it out. This is not a stumbling block. This is an opportunity.
This is an opportunity. Well, let's talk about that then, because you've been married for a long time. And I truly believe that. I think, when I hear people, they're like, oh, we've been married, 25 years, 35 years. First question I'm thinking to myself, but are you happy? Because, being married for that long, and you can honestly look back and say, I am miserable. Oh my goodness, we fight all the time and things are not really aligned. I mean, that is tough. That is tough. Because I truly believe if couples, I love that you said that a couples are truly committed together, like are committed to one another. I believe that we can work things out. I believe that we're not stuck. I believe that people can grow. I believe that people can change. I just believe that with all my heart. And so you get married and, you've been married, obviously for a long time. So take me back when you got married for the very first time,
Mhm.
you're a young man, I would think, and you're in love. And what were you thinking, Michael? Like, what were your expectations? Everything was going to be great.
It's funny. We get married, right? And
Yeah,
we fall in love and we think it's going to be right off into the sunset and everything's,
totally.
champagne, roses and rainbows and unicorns, right? And it's not. And every
Yeah.
relationship, even the masters of relationship, I would say my wife and I have a podcast. We've done over 140 episodes. I wrote a book. We've done a lot of training. I've done a lot of speaking. We still have conflict. Every relationship has it. It's not a question of if you're gonna, it's how do you deal with it? And when I work with a lot of my clients, I say you got to reframe conflict. Conflict is not let's get our dukes up and we're ready to fight. Conflict is, think of it this way. If you see somebody shoot up a flare and you're on the ocean, what do you think, right? What's the first thought that comes to mind if you see a red
Yeah,
flare?
you danger.
Distress. Somebody
Distress.
needs
Okay,
help,
yes,
right?
help. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's all conflict is. Conflict is someone saying, I'm waving a flag, caution. There's a problem. There's an issue. I've got a concern. I need help. I need support. Or just, hey, something's wrong, right? Engines aren't working here. Okay. So when you see that, you want to lean in and you want to learn and find understanding on what is it that you have to do to give them what they need in that moment. Because we already said, hey, we're committed. So my job is to give my wife what she needs. Maybe not always what she wants, but I'm not an ATM just dispensing cash and pleasure and gifts or, honeydews anytime she wants it. But my job, my commitment is to give her what she needs to be fulfilled and content and successful in life and in our relationship. And so when conflict arises, it means it's a chance for me to find understanding of what does she really want in this situation? How does she want me to show up for her? A lot of men, I won't say all men, but a lot of men think when there's an issue, hey, I got to step in and solve this. Most women, most of the time, are not looking for a solution. They're looking to be listened to, heard, understood, and valued. And so it's not about me coming and fixing. It is me saying, what would your ideal outcome look like here? And how would you like me to support you in this? Hey, I just want you to listen. Great. Or I could use some ideas, or I don't know what to do, or I don't think I can make it on my own, right? You're going to find out. And the key is to, most people want to love the way they want to love somebody. But as a partner, a committed spouse, I need to love my wife the way she wants me to love her. And so if I'm not a mind reader. So I ask the question, say, what do you need from me? How can I best support you? I'm with you. I'm next to you. I'm behind you. I'm not going anywhere. We're going to figure this out together.
That's pretty powerful, actually. And I mean, really, when you think about it that way, what a difference. What a wow, night and day way of looking at it compared to what we usually, just automatically our default. I would just say, in general, like people just kind of default and they just go into not being able to have that skill that you just said.
Sure.
Where did that come from? Is that something that you had pretty early on in your marriage, or is this something that you actually had to develop? Because
it's a learned skill. It's not, some people may have it more experience, but after 20 years of marriage, I would say, Charlene, my wife and I were looking how we could twist the knife in the back. We weren't happy. We weren't fulfilled. And we said, this is not what we signed up for, not what we want. So what do we do? And that's when we doubled down. That's when we found a therapist. We got a coach. We read books, watched videos. We did the work, and we were willing to commit to find out what we had to do. And that skill is understanding wants and needs, communicating. Intimacy is another issue I'm sure we could get into. And it's huge. But if you ask a woman what intimacy is, she's probably going to say emotional connection. Okay. If you ask a man what he thinks intimacy is, he's going to say sex, probably, 9 out of 10 times. They're both right. It's just they define it differently. Or, if a guy says, hey, I have no intimacy in our relationship, in our marriage, it's sexless, it's lifeless. And I say, that's not the, having that intimacy, or the sexual part. Sexual part is one kind of intimacy. That's not the goal. The goal is, you're going to fulfill all the intimate needs of your wife, spiritual intimacy. You're going to do physical, non-sexual intimacy, emotional, intellectual, experiential. We're going to go through all the intimacies. The sexual intimacy is the outcome of doing all the others really well. And so my wife and I had to learn, what are all the things that we need to do to make sure our love tanks are full. One of the things I do with my wife all the time is I'll say, all right, 1 to 10, how well am I filling your love tank right now? Never gotten a 10, gotten a 9.5, 9.6, 9.7, right?
Yeah.
And I've gotten some 6s and 5s too, right? And then so no matter what score I get, right? Let's say it was a 7.5. I'd say, ooh, what would it have to be an 8.5? What would that look like? And guess what? She's going to tell me, well, for me to feel like my love tank is really full, I need. Boom. Right? Instead of me thinking, I bet she'd love some flowers. I bet she'd love me to take her on an expensive vacation. Bet she'd love something bright and shiny, a great piece of jewelry, right? Those all may be true, but instead of me guessing and trying to read her mind, I need to say, tell me what you need to feel intimately connected to me. Because guess what? If she does, all the other good stuff's going to happen. But I've got to work to make that connection, emotional connection. And that means I'm going to be emotionally available. I'm going to tell her what I'm thinking, what I'm struggling. I'm going to make sure I understand where she is. Want me to give you the best piece of gold I can for anybody in any relationship?
I want to hear it.
Totally free. This is no charge. Okay. And you're getting it here today.
Let's hear it.
You need to be able to answer this one question. And when I start working with couples, this is one of the first questions I ask.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised how many of them cannot answer it correctly.
Okay.
I say, what is your partner's number one need in life right now? What's their biggest
Wow.
concern? What's their biggest struggle? Or as a friend of mine would say, what's the biggest piece of furniture in their room they just can't get around? And do you know it? Right? A lot of them don't even know it. Or they can say, I know it,
Good.
and they nail it. And then I can say, and how do they want you to support them in it right now? So that question with the answer of how support, you'd be amazed how many great couples and relation people don't know. I could tell you right now what the top 3 for my wife are and what they've been and how they've changed and how she wants me to support her in it. How much more effective do you think I am as a spouse knowing that? And it might be that way for a year. It might change
It
tomorrow.
might change. Yep.
It could be the same in a month. It might change in a week, right? So it's being tethered closely enough to them to know what it is, and then how am I doing my job to fulfill it? Because if we're both doing that for each other, that's
Then you guys,
we're
yes.
already all
You're
way
already
down the
winning.
path.
You're winning.
Yeah, no doubt, we're
You're
winning. Exactly.
You are. Like, seriously. Well, let me ask you this then. So you already mentioned that you've been married, and then about year 20, you finally guys got to a head. You're like, okay, something's got to change. Something's not working.
Mhm.
What did you notice, obviously kind of with you and your wife and with couples that you work with? What starts happening? Because you explained, because I know that the listeners right now, and I would just say this to you, we have pretty much half and half. We have, and it's a lot of females on listening to this
Sure.
podcast, but we have, I would say, truly women that are single, very high achieving women, and they are really looking for a true committed relationship,
Mhm.
that they can have partnership and be
Sure.
married and the whole thing. And then there are women that are married listening to this, and they come to the show to either enhance their relationship, or they're really curious, like, is this good? Like, what's going on with our marriage? We're not really connecting. So they want to learn. So what have you noticed? And I know there's a little bit of difference, everyone's a little different. I get it. But just
Sure.
overall, what starts happening? What happens?
I think communication is
Okay.
probably, I call communication the glue,
Okay.
which really helps a relationship stick together. The first thing we talked about, commitment. I have kind of 3 C's that I
Okay.
think are part of a foundation. That first one's commitment.
Mhm.
If you can, I've talked to some couples and I'll say to the woman, well, why are you here with me? Well, I want to deepen this. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to communicate better. I want to have more intimacy. And I'll say to the man, why are you here? And he said, because she said I had to be.
Mm.
And I'll say, no, wait a minute. If your only reason for being here is because you feel you have to be, I said, that's not commitment. I said, this is going to be a waste of your time and a waste of my time and a waste of your money. That's not a good enough reason to be here, is because you feel, she said you have to be.
So
Right.
they got to be all in. So this is
all in
really
commitment. So if
important.
commitment's there, communication is next, because,
Okay.
and communication is not just me telling you what I want and what I need. That's part of it, but it's me working, and working is the active word here, to understand what your needs are and to make sure I'm aware of them and that you're sharing them with me. I can't read your mind. So if you're stewing over something, he ought to know, right? He should understand. He should know what my needs are. No, he
No,
shouldn't.
no,
No more than you should automatically. You might have an idea or
but you
some
don't know.
thoughts, right? But so communication is huge, and there's usually breakdowns in communication. And people, there's financial conflict, there's intimacy conflict, and in my least favorite throwaway phrase that people say is, well, we just grew apart. No, nobody just grows apart. It's an active, conscious, daily decision. Drift. It occurs, but it occurs every decision you make every day. Yeah, if you don't connect, if you don't communicate, if you don't listen, if you're not committed, if you're not demonstrating that commitment in your love and with the acts that you do for each other, for service, if you're not intimate, if there's not faith and moral code, something larger that guides your relationship, if you don't appreciate your partner, if they don't feel secure in the relationship, and if you're not having fun and injecting a lot of humor, right? So you can usually tell, communication is huge.
It's
Conflict.
huge.
Oh, all we do is fight and argue, right? Because people think they still have to win, right? Before you get married, it's I and you. Once you're married, it's us. So if the relationship wins, you both win. So the question to ask is not who won, but does the relationship win? Because if the relationship wins, you both win. Now, does that mean that sometimes I'm going to give ground and do something I don't want to do? Absolutely. Because the relationship wins.
It's the
Because
relationship.
my wife might just need a win on something. She needs to be heard. She needs to be validated. And if I can give that to her, why wouldn't I? It's not about being right. It's about, are we winning? And when we win, I'm part of that.
It changes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It changes
And
everything.
I think a lot of people get hung up on that, who's wrong and who's right. And it's really irrelevant. But it's about, validation and being, there's a funny acronym. I say HUVA, HUVA, like a New England vacuum cleaner salesman, right? Everybody likes to be heard, understood, valued, and appreciated. HUVA. And if you're not feeling any of those things, you have an opportunity to come together and have greater communication so you can get there for each other.
That's good. That's really good, because I truly believe too, I don't think we really understand the breakdown when it comes to communication. You hear communication said all the time, but there's so many layers to it. There's really so many layers. And when we talk about communication, if we are not truly able to, what I like to say is be microscopic honest with one another, whatever that is. Like, down to the actual core truth, and being able to talk to your partner in a way that's true vulnerability, and communicate your wants and your needs, but also the things that you feel that, you think that, oh, they're not going to like that. Well, no, they need to know that. They really need to know, because I think once we get down to the bottom of whatever's going on in our honesty, and I love how you said that we can't read our partner's mind. We can't. We actually can't.
No.
And I think, for a lot of us women, I don't know, I'm not speaking for the men, I'm going to just speak in general for women, but I really believe a lot of us women, we just believe that he should know, like he should know. And a lot of men are like, I don't know. I love how you said, they're like, I don't know if she really wants, the flowers maybe, or she wants something else. Okay. So let's talk about that. So if couples are in relationship and there's love there and they are committed, but they're not having that type of true conversation, or what a shift, what's something that couples can start doing? Or for my listeners that are women and they're like, okay, Matthew and Charlene, listen, me and my husband, we struggle with, communicating. Sure. And I have a hard time when I go communicate with my husband, he'll shut down. How do we start bridging the gap with communication?
Yeah, that's a great question. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. And I want to come back to the idea of trust and honesty. And that also kinds of lead to security. Okay. If somebody feels safe in a relationship, I trust you. In other words, I can tell you something and be vulnerable, and it's not going to come back and be used against me. Right. You're going to be honest with me. You've demonstrated through your action that you're reliable. You're going to do what you say and say what you do. You're going to be intent with your word. Right. And that's huge, because if couples don't feel safe, oh my gosh, I shared this one thing and he beat me over the head with it.
Right.
I've never heard the end of it. Or I made a mistake. Yes, it was a mistake.
Yes.
And they've never let me forget it. Every time we're in an argument, they rehash and bring up this thing I did. So I'm not feeling secure. Okay. So trust and honesty and security. And a lot of times I work with couples on boundaries. And I say, listen, it is normal for you each to have personal boundaries. And the personal boundaries are, what are my absolutes?
Okay.
What are the things I've got to have to feel trust, security, and respect in our relationship? And my wife knows that if she raises her voice and starts yelling at me, I told you, right? Boom, I'm shutting off.
You shut off.
I don't like to be yelled at. I don't like vulgarity. I don't like swearing, and she says, you're just like calm as a cucumber, cool, one level. I could be really angry, Charlene, with you right now, and talk to you in the same tone and level and volume, I would just choose different words, right?
Mhm.
To get
Mhm.
my point across. So that's me. I have boundaries. If you yell at me, right? It's a non-starter. I'm going to shut off and I'm not going to engage. I also have personal boundaries of I need, right? For me to be my best, I've got to be physically active as well as mentally. I got to exercise because if I don't get that energy out and feel like I'm moving my body, I'm not going to be the best for you. So I talk to
Mm.
couples and I say, what are the non-negotiables that you need with each other and that you need for yourself? For me to be my best, to show up 100%, I need these three things. Okay, great. Write them down. And then in our relationship, I need you to be honest with me. I need you to prioritize me so that we have time together, right? Okay. And if each person does that, pretty clear ground rules, right? About what I need to give you, what you need to give me, and what we need from each other in this relationship. A lot of couples don't have those agreements and they feel
Okay.
I'm not getting what I need. It's lopsided. I'm doing all the work and the duties around the house. My husband doesn't do any, right? Or, the husband might think, oh my gosh, all she does is spend, 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 spend. And, I'm working my butt off just to get the money in the account. She's working too. But man, the money, or maybe she isn't working. That's kind of irrelevant. But we each have these expectations and these stories we're telling ourselves because we haven't communicated our needs. For example, we'll go
Okay.
back and touch on those finances for a second.
Let's
My
go.
wife and I have a spending rule. If
Okay.
either of us is going to spend more than $500 on anything, might be 250, might be 100, might be $50 for you, might be $1,000. I won't spend more than that on anything unless I've consulted her. Or she says, we got to fix the roof, right? Or yes, the car needs new tires. But if I'm talking about spending money or booking a vacation that's going to cost thousands of dollars, I would never do that unless we talk about and get agreement on it because it's our decision, not my decision. And so
That
um,
makes sense.
I think, and that's just a small example.
Yeah.
So personal boundaries, what do I need for me? What are my non-negotiables? And then what do I need from us in the relationship? And really talking about those and having awareness and visibility because those are the ground rules. A
I
couple,
love that, Matthew. Like, wow, seriously. I just asked you a question, and you just gave such a clear start in how right now the listeners. This is really something really cool that you just said. How we can actually sit down first with our partners if we haven't had that type of communication, or like we've been kind of two ships in the night, if that's what's happening. I love that you said sit down first and figure out the main things first and ask each other, and tell each other, as you said, your boundaries. Wow, I think a lot of people just hearing that is like, huh, I never looked at it that way. I didn't even know that I have boundaries, because that's so true. When you said that, I'm like, I have boundaries.
yeah.
I
It
have
was
boundaries.
interesting. An amazing situation came up with a couple I was working
Yeah.
with where the woman said, and I said, what's your number one priority? And I was
Okay.
expecting to hear him. She
Okay.
said, my daughter. And I went, ooh.
Oh,
And I just said, and I said, well, how does he feel about that? And there was some concern there because, the best thing any married couple can give to their family or their kids is a solid relationship.
totally.
And so, my number one human relationship is my wife.
Yeah.
Her number one human relationship is me. Before that, we each have a commitment. We're both pretty devout, faithful people. And,
Mhm.
my wife knows she's number two because God's number one. And she would
Yes.
say the same thing. And we have that agreement because we both feel that we answer to a higher power first. So when you want to talk about security and commitment, right? What are your priorities? And that was kind of a non-starter that they had to work through in that relationship because I said, as long as he knows he's number two of people, I said, that could really be an issue if you're his number one. And I said,
No, that's so true.
most secure thing you can do for that little child is to show how committed you are to him and model what a committed relationship looks like. doesn't mean you're neglecting your child, but
No.
it means your children know number one relationship is mom and dad, and mom and
Yes.
dad have dedicated time. Mom and dad have boundaries, right? Of things they do, time with each other. That first few minutes when either one of you gets home from work or you reconnect after a long day, that's your time. And the kids can learn, even as babies, yeah, we love you, but you're going to be on your own for a few minutes because mom and dad are going to connect right now. And we're going to check in and make some of those tethers and ties to each other before we focus on anyone or anything else.
It's so important because, me, I'm a mama of 4 and 2 bonus. And and this is definitely something that I'm like, oh, thank goodness, me and my husband, we actually are best friends and we get along, and we didn't do everything perfect, but I think for the most part we try to do it pretty good for the most part.
Sure.
But I'm empty nester now. And I literally just told him this yesterday. I'm not even kidding you, Matthew. I was like, could you imagine? Oh my goodness, because it goes fast. Oh, they're all gone. I'm like, what? They just go. And I'm like, could you imagine if you and I really didn't connect and we weren't, prioritizing each other? Like, we would really have a hard time right now. He's like, totally. Like, that would be weird. And not that, I love the kids and I'm so involved with the kids. And, when they left, Matthew, I had a moment. I was like, oh, but I'm like, oh, this is not too bad.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because that's one of those points in a relationship. Kids are gone and it's just us.
That's it.
And a lot of couples struggle because if the kids have been the focus or the priority, kids aren't a focus or priority anymore. I mean, they're still in your life, but it's not the number one thing you're thinking and working about on a daily basis. And you've been neglecting the relationship. Of course, it's not going to be in great shape. And you're going to have to do a lot of care and feeding and attention to get it to a level where you want it to be.
No, because that is so important. And do you feel a question that came up that I actually wrote? Because like I said, my listeners are either single or they're married, right? And then this is great. You're going to love this. Then I have a small demographic of men. Hi, you guys, that are in their early 20s to mid 30s. Go figure. So they listen to this podcast too. So let me ask you this. When it comes to, let's speak right now, Matthew, my single ladies, okay?
Okay.
My single ladies are, looking for love, and they're looking for a relationship with a man, that this is even possible, right? Like, because we feel like, because I always believe, I said, majority of the men out there, ladies, I'm going to tell you this again. I'm not even kidding you. I promise you this. The majority of the men out there are awesome. Great. They're great. There are, of course, a lot of people that are not great, but there are a lot of people that are good human beings. Okay. Now, I know that to be true, but it really comes down to also courtship and venting and taking your time and getting to know someone. So this is the question I have for you. Okay.
Right.
For my single women, what qualities does a man need to develop before he's truly ready to be a God-centered partner? And what should women be looking for?
That's a great question. And I think, so let me make sure I understand the question. Okay. You said, what qualities should women develop?
What qualities does a man need to develop? So we're speaking to the men. Sure. What do they got to do? Okay. What qualities does a man need to develop before he's truly ready to be a God-centered partner? And what should women be looking for?
Yeah. So I think to answer that question, I'm going to take you on a short trip.
Okay.
And the trip is going to be, when I've talked to singles, people maybe someone is divorcing and they're like, oh my gosh, how do I not end up here again? Right.
Yeah.
Or someone I think this is the person, I'm not sure. Like, what are the criteria? How do I go about finding that person?
Correct.
And I said, well, the best way to go about it is to think about the qualities that are most important to you. And then here's the question is, how well are you demonstrating them to others? Right. And so, because if you don't know what's important to you and you're not really good at doing it yourself, it's really hard for you to, unless you put the mirror up and say, well, how am I doing it? How well am I doing it? And so you said a God-centered man. And so what that means to me when I hear that expression, it means selfless. It's not about me. It's a servant leader heart, and it's being led to serve and lift up and make someone better that they can be, as good as they can be. So I think for the single woman that's looking for that, be really clear about what's in, think about those boundaries we talked about earlier, and sharing what's important. Doesn't mean you have to say, I want 5 kids. And doesn't mean you have to overwhelm them with your life story, right? Of the thing
Right.
you envision of your ideal life. But it does mean you need to be really intimately close with what it looks like for you, for the qualities that are important to you, and to share. There's a phrase that we've all heard: being faithful over the little things means you're going to be faithful over the big things, right? So when you're in that dating relationship or you're with that person, you're wondering, is this them? I would ask you to think about this. How do they treat everybody else that they come into contact with?
I
How
love
do they
that.
treat the server? How do they treat the checkout cashier? How do they treat the person at the grocery store?
Love
How do
that.
they,
How are they
the
showing
post
up?
office, the postman, their neighbor, their family members, their siblings, their buddies, right? So the way they treat everybody else is the way they're going to treat you. And so they treat you fine, but they're a schmuck to somebody else. Guess what? That's kind of that nature coming out. So when you see somebody being faithful over the small things, oh my gosh, they were just so nice to the postal carrier person, to the person at the checkout counter at the grocery store, to the person at the restaurant that, took care of them, waited on them, or the hostess, whatever. So it's really important to think about how they're treating those small things, because they speak volumes. And also here's a great question for someone that's single to ask is,
Okay.
when they're in that conversation with somebody, tell me one of the things that you struggle with most, and what are you doing to get better about handling it? Right? In other words,
great question.
because it's kind
Ladies,
of
hold on, Matthew, hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, seriously? Oh my goodness, my single ladies, right now, pause, get a pen, get your phone. That is a really powerful question. I love already that he says, just observe first, and really see this man in his elements, see this man around, out and about, truly, really observe him. And when you are getting to know him and you're asking questions, ask questions that are really going to matter. And so, can you tell us that question again? Because they're going to write it down right now.
Yeah. So you want to ask them, what one issue do you struggle with the most right now? What are you struggling with the most right now? And what are you doing to try to overcome or address it so it's not a limiter for you? And that's self-effacing. So you're kind of asking somebody, what's one of your problems, right?
Yeah.
Right. And if someone's willing to do that and talk about that, they're emotionally vulnerable, because they're going to kind of bare their soul a little bit and open, well, okay, here's something I'm struggling with. And then ladies or gentlemen, you can say, follow up with, and how would you like me to support you in that?
That's good.
Because that's saying, I hear you. First of all, so what you're saying is, this is what I hear. Do I have it right? I do. And how could I support you best in that? You want to talk, that's leaning in. That's a step
That's leaning in.
That's getting close. And in the second, I want to go back to your question. You said God-fearing man.
Yes.
How does he worship? I'm not saying which religion, but I'm saying how. And how does he bring that into his family? If you want a family man, you want to have a father of your children, you want to have a husband. How does he relate to his parents? How does he relate to his siblings? How does he relate to his grandparents, his cousins? How does he value, and what role do they play in his life? Because how he treats his family is how he's going to create and treat you and your family. And that's going to be very telling to you. And if family is important to you, because if he's dissing his family and they never, and they won't, and I can't stand my mom. I don't want to, there may be some good reasons for that, and you can kind of work through that. But, seeing him in his element and how he's treating a family, which is what you want him to do with you, is going to be pretty insightful.
It's gonna be really insightful. Oh, that was really good. Okay, now you got me thinking for my married ladies. Hold on, I got another question. Here we go. Okay,
Sure.
for the married women, what is one thing you wish more wives understood about how men experience love, connection, and partnership in marriage?
That's a great question. And so I will tell you that men are experiential.
Okay,
Okay. When a man wants you to be close with him, you know what he's going to do?
what?
Let's go. Let's
Okay.
go. And let's go for a hike. Let's go for a
Okay.
bike ride. Let's
Okay.
go to this restaurant I really heard about and watch the game together and have a few drinks. Let's go experience. I experience intimacy. It's an action verb. It's not a philosophical discussion, right? It's not, let's talk about how much we love each other. Now, words, there's a great book by Gary Chapman called The 5 Love Languages. If you haven't read it, great book. I recommend it. But you got to know the love languages. There's 5 of them, but just that doesn't mean that, hey, my wife's number 1 is physical touch, so I just have to give her physical touch. No, it's a language.
It's a
I got to
language.
speak the whole language. I got to hit all 5 areas and make sure I'm delivering her what she needs, right?
Yeah, Matthew, my husband says I'm all 5 languages.
Yeah. Well, we all are.
Yeah,
It
you know
doesn't
what I mean?
like
We are.
I mean, gifts might be number 5 for us, but does it
Yeah.
mean we never want to get a gift? Right?
Meaningful gifts.
Maybe, who, if because the right gift at the right time with the right thought
Yeah.
is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say, ladies, men are experiential, and that goes for intimacy as well. And it means just understanding that, so guys are more kinesthetic and women are more cerebral and emotionally, the woman's going to think and process first before she does. The guy's going to probably do before he thinks and processes very much.
Okay.
So, a couple I work with, one of his requests for his wife of 9 years is, will you go on more walks with me? Because yes, they want to be active, but I said to the wife, I go, this is a win-win for you because he's going to open up more when he's doing something physically that he likes to do. So you want to have those board meetings, have those talks about meaningful stuff. My wife and I ruck. We put backpacks on with weights in them and we go for fast walks.
Okay.
It's like having a board meeting because we turn our phones off. We don't answer them, right? Unless it's an emergency. We talk and it's just the two of us and our bodies are engaged. So our thoughts are free to focus on each other. And
that's really good. You're saying that. So basically you're saying, if we're wanting to have, like start that type of different dialogue, talk more, get a little more deeper, really look at it as in the sense of when women are like, oh, he's quiet, he doesn't talk. We try to sit down, have a conversation. I'm just, you're saying get him out. You know what I mean? Get him moving, get something going.
Engage in something. It could be a walk. It could be a run. It could be a boat ride. It could be a bike ride. It could be a hike. It could be not sitting in, not a passive activity, not sitting and watching the game. That's not doing it. But most men, they don't want to sit at a candlelit dinner with silence and talk for 3 hours.
No, we do.
I love romantic dinners. I do. Don't get me wrong. I like
those movies, they really got us crazy. Because I was literally telling women, I said, think about this realistically. Let's really think about this realistically. We grew up, as women, we really, truly, that's what we watched. We watched those movies. We watched, Bridgerton. We watched all the feel good stuff. Men were not watching that stuff. They were actually out being physical. They were doing stuff. Yeah. They were right. That's just how it was. So when women are like, yay, and men are like, whoa, because you guys we love each other differently.
Yeah. I mean, it could be line dancing. I mean, you guys could be doing something together. My wife and I both love to dance. We didn't know how to line dance. And where we live in Greenville, South Carolina, Wednesday nights, we'd go out and learn. We had so much fun because we were on equal footing. It wasn't something that I'm awesome at and she stunk or vice versa, right? That's also hard for men. If you're an incredible dancer and he is not, and you're like, let's go dance for 2 hours. Yeah, that's going to be, doesn't mean you can't go dancing. Right. But I mean, you could go golfing. My wife and I go shooting together. I mean, there's so many, we could paint pottery. There's so many things you can do together, and have fun. And then it's in those moments together where the connection happens. It's the talks, it's the questions, and it's learning how to talk. Also, women, don't ask close-ended questions.
Give me examples. Give me some examples.
Here's a close-ended. How was your day?
Okay.
It's fine.
Fine.
Okay. Did you have a good time at the game? Yeah. Okay. Did you enjoy golfing with your dad?
Yes.
Yeah. As opposed to, what did you and your dad talk about when you were golfing today? What was the highlight of your time with your father? Right? What made you laugh in the activity you did with the guys from work? Right? Whatever. So, and open-ended, back to communication, open-ended questions are huge.
Oh, they're huge.
How, why, when, what, tell me about, right? One of the questions I love to ask my wife is, what made you smile today? Or laugh, right? Or, just those open-ended questions. How did that make you feel? Okay. So open-ended questions are going to get him or her to talk. And then you got to be kind of like Sherlock when they ask that question and I say, what was the best part of your day? And she goes, oh my gosh, my boss, da, 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 da. Really? What were you feeling when that happened today? Or what feelings and emotions came up for you in that situation? Right? Not, oh, I'm glad to hear that, honey. That's nice. Right? I followed the lead, right? I went in and made her go a little deeper.
Get
and
deeper.
tell me what feelings and emotions came up for her when that she got off the phone with her mom and her mom was crying. Right? Wow, that sounded like a really heavy conversation. How do you feel after having had that? Or it is, what does it make you think about your mom? Or right. So you're asking the what, the how, the when, the why.
Yes, you're asking the feel really questions, for someone to really dive a little deeper and really truly be able to talk that out and feel like when my husband asked me those questions, I'm going to have him watch this episode. Oh, but when my husband asked me those questions, when he goes a little deeper, oh my goodness, I'm just like, oh, I love it. Like it makes me feel, oh, okay. He really cares. Wow. He's really interested in, what I experienced, what I went through. Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel that, because you said earlier when we started this podcast, you said, yes, you work with men. Yes, you work with couples, all the things. And I want the listeners to hear this. Do you feel that if couples are in relationships and this is not happening, all these feel good things that you're talking about, things that I think that we all can apply to the relationship, do you feel that the pattern can change? Do you feel that just because the couples haven't been doing things like this, that they can do things like this? I really want people to hear that.
Sure. And I'm going to give you a response with a great statement. And this is the truth. It's never too late for repair.
Ooh.
Never.
Okay. Did you guys hear that?
Never too late.
Oh, I love that. It's never too late for repair.
And that could be something that happened 20 years ago.
Okay.
That could be something that happened 5 years ago. It could be something that happened this morning or yesterday. When communication is an issue or someone feels injured or hurt or a victim, or maybe there's been infidelity in the relationship, right?
Okay. Yes.
And someone goes, well, gee, I blew it. And will she ever take me back? And I said, well, I can't really answer that question. Or will he ever take me back? I can't answer that question. I said, but, have you really apologized? Like there's a right and a wrong way to apologize. Apologizing is not, I'm sorry, right? There's a whole nother 5 or 6 steps I go through with people to really do that well. But if there's something that happened in the past, you can bring that back and say, you know what? I did. And maybe they don't even know it. Maybe it's something they're unaware. You could say, I did this and I'm coming out and I own it. And it was a mistake. There's no justification, right? I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I'm going to commit to not doing it again. And then what can I do to make amends and make it up to you so that we can get whole in your eyes? What would that look like? And so,
Yes.
I think that's magical because, she'll never forgive me. He'll never forget XYZ. I said, that's not the case. Right. Once you've had that, because sometimes, I said I was sorry. I said, well, that's not an apology. So when you've gone through the whole process and really owned it and done all the steps to commit and ask for amends and ask, will you please forgive me? Right. And forgiveness. Oh my gosh. I've got a family member who is struggling with another family member, and they say she will never come in my home again. I choose not to be around her. And I said, wow. I said, when you don't forgive somebody, it's poison that you keep drinking every single day. Forgiveness is not for the other person.
No.
Forgiveness is for you. And so if I can forgive, it means it doesn't poison me anymore. I'm getting rid of the poison, right? So it allows me to move on. I don't care what it does for them, really, right? Especially if it's someone I'm connected to, I do care. But forgiveness is about giving yourself the freedom to continue without limitation of a circumstance or a person. That's what forgiveness is.
That's forgiveness. Well, let me ask you another step on that.
Sure.
If for the couples that are married and there has been infidelity on one or the other, and the person has decided to, work on the marriage, but they're struggling, like you just said, with forgiving, or they're struggling with that anxiousness of like, the trust again, how to rebuild the trust. Where can they start?
Sure. Well, I want to say that trust is 1,000 deposits to get it established. To break it, it's one huge withdrawal. So infidelity, for example, takes a baseball bat to the relation. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's forgivable, right?
Okay.
It doesn't, but if you want it to be, but it takes time. And if someone said, could it happen in 6 months? It could. Might it take a year? It might. What about 2 years? Yep, certainly. Right. It's, and the partner that maybe was on the injurious side might say, well, when? And it's like, well, it's when they feel that they can trust you, when they feel secure, when they feel you're being honest, when they feel, and it could be, if it's infidelity, it's going to be sharing your location, right? Where am I? Or saying, hey, babe, I'm going to the grocery store and then I'm going to get gas and then I'm coming home, right? It's making that deposit again and again and again and again to know you're not going somewhere where you said you weren't going to be. It's building back up the bank account that you've just overdrawn, right? Okay. And it happens when they're ready. And, when will she forgive me? Well, or when will he forgive her? It goes both ways. It's not, it depends on what do they need. And that may be, there's time, effort, and that time doesn't heal anything. Action heals things, right?
I agree.
And repeated consistency, right?
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that too. I love that because you can absolutely build that trust again, but it takes that repeated consistency. They have to see that you are actually doing it differently. You are actually saying you are where you are. You are actually, checking in the way that person needs to check in. And I do believe this. I feel like I have this little, I know I have a magic number, but maybe I don't know. And I do believe, it's what I believe with all my heart. Okay. That if trust is broken, and the person truly wants to rebuild that trust with that person that they broke it with, right? If you can stay active consistently, honestly, 2 years. I know. Because I think in 2 years, if that you can completely change the whole dynamics, if it's been a consistent growth, change. Yeah. Now, not everyone needs 2 years, but I'm just saying, Everyone's a little different. I think, like you said, it could be 6 months, but to fully be able to be like, wow, you can look back and go, wow, it's so different now. They
Yeah.
have to see it over time.
You know what the
Consistency.
magic answer is to how long it takes?
How long?
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Yeah.
Yeah. And as the person who maybe broke the trust, you got to be ready to accept that.
Yeah.
It may not be defined in time that you can quantify now. Maybe after you'll be able to, but it's whatever they need.
Yeah.
What do you need me to do? You need me to, Life 360. You want to put a tractor tag on my briefcase and my car keys.
You're like, okay, do it.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, is it worth it to you? You really you want to salvage this? Then your attitude needs to be, hey, whatever it takes.
So have you then, again, like we said earlier, and that's what I love about these conversations. A lot of these, time just goes so fast. A lot of the things that we're talking about today are things that we can actually do in our marriage, even if you've never done it before. That's why I love these conversations, because I truly believe that all of us have opportunities, and you listening to podcasts like this have opportunities to grow, to learn, to do things differently. And if there's a will, you guys, there's a way. And if you are in a marriage, and I love that he said that, and you are truly committed to one another, things can grow, things can change.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's the truth. I've seen it in my own relationship, my own marriage, and I've seen it with countless clients that I've worked with.
Well, let me ask you this. You said you've been married, I said you celebrating 35 years.
31.
31 years. And
we'll get to 35 though.
Yeah, you will. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm already adding it. 31 years. And you said to me earlier, it's not the length of the marriage. It's the strength of the marriage. It's the fun of the marriage. Okay. What would you say now? You said earlier too that, your marriage is as good as it gets. Like, it's like amazing. For those that are listening right now, you said, yes, it can get even better. What does that even look like now for you?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you. Okay, so my wife and I both value intimacy heavily in our relationship. And, I hear from some of my clients, even friends or family members, who talk about, oh, my partner won't do that. They would never, and or they withhold intimacy, they broker it. Power. It's a power struggle, or it's conditional, or when you do this, then I'll, right. And I think that my wife and I have taken the limitations off our relationship, in that let's put it this way. Neither of us lack for any desire or want being fulfilled in our relationship, because we don't withhold from each other. We don't make it quid pro quo. There's no conditional relationship. It's, if I can, I will. If you want me to, I'll try. Right. And, and it's not, and, a lot of men, the cooler talk, oh, my wife's so stingy, we haven't, once a week, if I'm lucky, whatever. Right. And I just am smiling. They're like, why are you smiling?
Yeah.
And I just say, there's no limitations. It's not, there's no, it's not negotiated. It's not, so I think that you can, if you can speak it, and you can have it. And I think it's about really communicating desire. It's like, why wouldn't your partner meet all your desires? Why wouldn't they? I mean, if they physically can't,
right?
If it's impossible for them to do what you want them to do, that's one thing. But, I mean, I work hard mentally, physically, spiritually, to give my wife, to be the man she wants me to be. I want her to look at me and go, dang, you're one sexy guy, right? Yeah. So I'm not a slob. I'm not overweight. I exercise. I work out, I'm in good shape. I'm conditioned.
Take care of yourself. That's really attractive.
Yeah. I mean, and the same thing for her. If you don't take care of yourself, it's a big comment about how you feel about yourself. But it's also like saying, you're not worth me taking care of myself.
That's so
And
true because you mentioned something earlier about that. You were saying, and especially when it comes to the relationship, we really truly have to look inwards and say, how are we showing up? Are we feeling honestly, if we're struggling, you guys, that's a real thing. If you are struggling in your relationship, you got to look inwards. Are you struggling with yourself? Are you feeling good about yourself? Do you have energy? Are you drinking your water? Like seriously? I mean, being dehydrated is like the worst. Are you moving your body? Do you like what you see in the mirror? Do you have that, when you're taking care of yourself, when you like what you see in the mirror, when no one's going to be perfect, but you know that we show up differently. We know that you have a different confidence, you feel better, you have more energy. And I think that's really cool that you said that because we do have to take care of ourselves. And everyone has a different way of looking at that. But being able to like what we see first in the mirror, it's huge. It's
yeah,
huge. It's
absolutely.
it's
It pervades everything. And how somebody dresses, how they carry themselves, it says more than any words they could possibly say. Before they open their mouth and say a word, you can look at somebody and see how they feel about themselves.
absolutely. No, and how did we just talk for an hour? Did you feel like this was an hour?
It went fast. Time flies when you're having fun,
I
right?
know. No, 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 no. Did you just feel like this was an hour? No,
No,
Matthew,
not
what
at
just
all.
happened?
Love it.
Like that, I was like, wow. Oh my goodness, Matthew, come back. Like seriously. Wow. Oh my friend. I just felt like I just got started with you. You've been dropping so many nuggets on this conversation today. Let me ask you this for the listeners that are listening right now, and they're like,
Mhm.
"Ooh, I got to get in Matthew's world." How can they work with you? Where do they find you?
Sure.
You are just wow, just so knowledgeable and so helpful when it
Thank
comes
you.
to really helping us have healthy relationships, fun
Thank you.
relationships. I really
Well,
appreciate this conversation
oh my,
because
you can tell I've got a little bit of passion around it. I love it. And, I'm a mission driven messenger and I'm just really trying to promote my uniqueness in the service of others. And that's my juice. And so you can go to matthewphoffman.com and learn about all the things I do. There's a lot of great free resources there. I have a weekly blog that comes out on business and on relationships, videos. My wife and I do marriage moment videos every week of like, what's the one thing you can do this week to improve? And, I'd love to offer to everybody. It's on my website if you want to go there, but everybody that's listening today, I would love to give you a complimentary coaching session because I think you
oh,
haven't experienced the power of coaching, and what's so cool is the topic is what you choose.
okay.
So if you go to my website, matthewphoffman.com, you can say, get my complimentary session. And you're going to answer a few questions and you're going to be able to get on my calendar and grab a time where I can work with you on a wish becoming your new reality. And that's the power of coaching.
Matthew, that is the coolest thing I've ever heard. That is so cool. You guys, seriously, wow. You can literally please, we're going to leave that information in the show notes. Like it's for real.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that. Like if you're listening to this podcast, it doesn't matter if you're a single woman. It doesn't matter if you're married. It doesn't matter if you're a man. It doesn't matter. It don't matter if something resonated with you or something else that's tugging on your heart and you're like, okay, yeah, yeah. I want to ask Matthew a question. I really got something I want to work through. He just offered that. So my listeners, please take advantage of that. It's a free coaching call from an actual expert. And this is the work that he's doing. Matthew, that's really cool.
My pleasure. Well, I
That's
get excited. I love it. I love working with people that want to make their dreams their new reality. That's what it's all about.
That is fantastic. Okay, and I know I gotta get. I know. Every week it's like it's just too fast, too fast, too fast. Before we end this podcast, is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with that maybe something we didn't talk about, or is there anything else that you would like to say?
I just like to just share that nugget we dropped earlier that it's never too late for repair. Don't think it's impossible. It's because when you're committed, and your partner's committed, anything is possible. And I think sometimes you may have to be the one that takes the lead to say, we can do this and let me show you how. and then your partner is able to come alongside you and join you in that commitment. So we're made to be in relation. We're built to go together, and there's no reason why you aren't capable and deserving of having the relationship of your dreams. And it's an investment. There's no silver bullet. There's no magic wand I can wave, but I can give you the tools and the systems and hold you accountable to get to that desired location, that destination.
I love that. Thank you, my friend. You're amazing. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And to next time, cheers to great love. If you're loving this podcast and these incredible conversations, please hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Don't miss an episode, because each week I'll be bringing on guests and experts who will share their knowledge about love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. And until then, cheers to great love.